In 1969, Mackinlay Kantor wrote a book called Missouri Bittersweet. He was an interesting author. He won the Pulitzer Prize for his book Andersonville about the Civil War. In this book on Missouri, I'm going to read the chapter, Was the Road of Late So Toilsome?, which is a quote from a Walt Whitman poem. Susie Billings and her son, that there boy Watson, lived on the east side of US 65. Watson, a slow-spoken young middle-aged man with a solemn face, had just finished building a new filling station and was rightfully proud of it. He had performed the greater share of construction work himself. Incorporated into plaster, which covered the exterior, were a collection of interesting stones. Watson Billings said that he had been collecting and saving them for a long time, just for this purpose. He pointed out certain specimens. This here one looks like it could have been something made by the Indians, like enough. See those lines on it, and the way it's kind of chipped? This here one, now, this is what folks call a meteor. Can you imagine that one time this thing was red hot? When it landed here in Benton County, after flying all the way, maybe from the Milky Way? Folks say is how they get hot from traveling through the air so fast. His mother, Susie, was purple around the mouth. Mulberries, oh, how I love 'em. Used to pick 'em all the time when I was a little girl, many years gone. We had a tree right in our yard, but I haven't had any for years and years, and yesterday I went up to somewhere or other, and first thing I saw, a tree just plain loaded with mulberries. Well, I tell you, I picked and then picked some more. Brung home a big basketful, and I've been piecing on 'em ever since. Want some? Her hair was chopped off in a short bob, almost in what used to be called a boyish bob. A little woman with a persistent but secretive smile, she was given to quick, nervous gestures. You thought of a feminine Puck, a grandmother of dryads. We must have visited with Susie and her son for an hour, but Susie did most of the talking. I adore to talk, oh my! And she'd squeeze her darting eyes shut for a moment and shudder deliciously in pure concentration of enjoyment. Just adore to talk, like to talk about folks. She gave us the life histories of half a dozen fellow villagers. And Mr. Gadfly was sick, I don't know how long before he died. It was something the matter with his stomach and bowels. Poor old thing, you could hear him belch clean down to the corner. Where are you folks from? My goodness, you are? Well, we do get all kinds past here. The other day we had a car stop from Texas. I suppose I oughtn't be surprised, but we've had 'em from California, too. Buying gas right here from that there boy Watson. And come from California. Watson nodded. Yep, and we had one carload from Portland, Oregon. I had given long study to our map at breakfast time, and now I spread the map out and asked advice of the Billingses. US 65 was paved. A road over in the next county to the east, a north and south road like this, also was paved. But in those days, there was no US 54 running west from Max Creek to Preston. In order to return north by a different paved route, we'd have to go all the way down to Buffalo in Dallas County. Still, it looks like it's only about 10 or 12 miles from Cross Timber to Max Creek in a straight line. Watson searched his memory. I think there's a kind of road there, at least it goes part way. Do you think that I could get through in this car? Well, now, I don't know. I know folks go through there horseback or sometimes in wagons. There just must be some kind of road way back yonder. That's the Little Niagara River, this here Blue Mark running in between. If we could make it across from Hickory County into Camden County, from Cross Timbers to Max Creek, it might save us a lot of driving. I mean going clear down to Buffalo and back on the other road. Yep, 'twould, if you could manage to make it. That other road over east is slabbed just like this. Least you can do, said Watson, is to try it. When he said try, he said try. When he said it, Irene squeezed my hand. We share an abiding partiality to honest idiom and dialect. Plumb certain you don't want some millberries? Susie asked. Now, you folks come back sometime. And we promised. Did go back, too, twice through the years. We drove south across timbers and made a few more inquiries there. That side road, leading vaguely in the direction of the Little Niangua, was pointed out, but no one was sure how far it extended. Irene said, best we can do is try it. The road had been graveled for a little way, but soon gravel ran out. Then came dirt ungraded, and then gradually, after we'd passed a few small houses, we were traveling in two ruts with grass growing between. We went down into a creek valley. There was a concrete causeway with merry water running moss green across it. This seemed like a real lark. I drove through cautiously, not wishing to splash the engine. Climbed a hill, went down another hill. Twin tracks lured us on. The sparse forest on either side was shady and inviting. Wild weeds blooming. A scarlet tanager flashed across in front, his shiny black wings turned to silver. Irene said blissfully, the real back yonder Ozarks, in June. Heaven must be like this, or should be. Down another hill, warily. Yes, the ruts led to a new creekside, but here there was no causeway, only clear water flowing, undisturbed except by a lazy catfish hanging with his head against the current. That's a ford, all right, I said, a little dubiously. At least I think it is. Aren't those tracks coming out over there on the opposite bank? Looks like, darling. Are you going to try it? Yep, I'll try. Yet how many times have I decried phonetic dialect and insisted that it shouldn't be rendered? But it's sort of fun to try it again. Hadn't forded an uncausewayed stream in a long time, and then it was a venerable Model T which had a lot of daylight under it. But here the bottom consisted of several stony shelves. We bumped easily from one to another, and since there appeared to have been no heavy rains of late, we came out on the farther side without spinning any wheels. Once across, why are we stopping here? We're stopping because we must decide where the road is. I just can't make out no more road, honey. We go out for a survey. No longer any ruts or tracks. But were we imagining a wide space such as a grass-grown, leaf-strewn, weedless, one-time cart path, opening ahead and curving off toward the east? It did seem like the way after all. We followed this vague sluiceway for another 10 minutes, then halted. Bingo. No more route apparent. I got out for another exploration on foot. We were near the summit of a new ridge. In 2 or 3 places through low oaks I could see ground falling away to the east and south. After trudging in circles a while, I found, about a city block to the left, a path suggestive of an old road. Tried to recall some misty tracking lore learned in boyhood. Got down on my knees and examined the earth closely. Sure enough, hoofprints. Horses, mules, and human feet, bare, had gone through an old mud hole, now parched and holding the marks in natural moulage. I went cheerily back to Irene and told her what I'd found. I didn't, however, mention something else. Far ahead, as I lifted my gaze from examination of the path, I saw a figure running rapidly, disappearing amid hazel brush. Young man, young woman, I couldn't quite decide. I thought it might be a girl. Bare legs flashing and a glimpse of pale blue fabric, that was all. Whoever it was raced with the speed of a weasel. Picking a way carefully between larger trees, crushing down or scraping through berry vines, we drove to the path and then turned south along it. Are you sure this is correct? By this time, I'm sure about nothing, but at least it's a clear day. There are a few clouds, but we can see the sun most of the time. We know the time of day, and we know the main direction in which we need to travel. We'll progress through paths and cow pastures until we come out somewhere. How about our turning around and going back the way we came? Do you think we'd be able to follow our own tracks? Disquieting information was registered by the odometer. We had traveled nearly 6 miles since leaving Cross Timbers. I could not with assurance embrace the notion that we were already halfway to Max Creek. Were we even on the way to Max Creek? Still, the thought of trying to retrace our passage, a return route over the exact course we'd traveled, was intolerable. Often we'd driven across barren soil, hard-baked stuff which wouldn't offer a clue. Also, grass was thin through other distances. On one slope, we'd scraped over an expanse of naked rock from which all soil had been eroded. We agreed that it would be tougher to go back than to forge ahead. Indeed, this must have been a roadway at one time, at least a lane, wide enough for small vehicles. Trees lined the sides, but we could always get between them. Abruptly, the path divided, as I'd feared it might. Once more, examination of the terrain before us and the ground under our feet. The major amount of traffic has been on the right, not on the left. But don't we want to go southeast? If we go to the right, we'll be turning back west. I said somewhat hopelessly, "Oh, these trails just wander around here and there. And then, well, we'll probably get back on an eastern course later on." "You were right," she exclaimed in a few minutes. "We're coming to a house. See? Gray boards." Gray boards, all right, but they were merely part of a pile of leavings stacked up. Some still standing, many fallen amid mounds of long, rotted sawdust. Somebody had a sawmill here and was cutting out planks. I tried to speak in an encouraging tone. She said they look awfully weathered, all twisted and bent and dried. Makes me feel a trifle mournful. Nothing to do but go on, following the track. We encountered places where the trees were too close, had to leave the trace, go out to left or right, circling, backing, filling, in order to return to that vague line of hoofprints and footprints and dehydrated mud holes once more. Then, rounding a sharp curve, we both exclaimed with satisfaction, here was a house, inhabited too. Thin smoke issued from a tumbled-down chimney. A sagging stoop had been built across the front of the shanty, and someone was sitting there. We'll be able to get directions. These folks can tell us how to get back to the road. A fence surrounded the place, but the gate stood open and some pails were broken loose. High-backed hogs wandered at will or lay in shadows under the stilt-built house. On that stoop, a woman roosted with her back against smooth, once whitewashed logs of the outer wall, and deformed legs were doubled partially under the rest of her body. Nearby were 2 little crutches, whittled from hardwood, crudely pegged together, but they were child's-size crutches. The woman wore a calico gown so faded that she seemed one with dun logs, dun boards on which she huddled, dun stable and sheds beyond. Front door of the cabin stood open. As I walked hesitantly up to the edge of the porch, I could see the glow of fire on a hearth inside the house. "Good day, ma'am." After a moment, I repeated the words weakly, and once more in a manner of question. Irene approached, coming behind me slowly, then she stopped. I heard her quick intake of breath as she estimated the quality of the cretin before us. The woman might have been 70, might have been 80 years old. Her face was like a crumpled brown paper sack into which countless creases had been squeezed. Shoe-button eyes peeped out from under pink lids. She held her mouth open and was breathing rapidly. A claw-like hand stole out, trying to grasp one of the crutches. Perhaps she had some notion of using it for a weapon if we came too close. End of part 1.